Your personal philosophy is the foundation upon which everything in your life is built. It's not just a belief or a passing idea. It's the collection of thoughts, attitudes, perspectives, and core values that guide every decision you make, whether you realize it or not. And what's more important to understand is that your philosophy is not something you inherit, it's something you choose. Day by day, word by word, book by book, experience by experience, you're constructing a framework that determines how you live your life. And here's the truth. If you don't deliberately design that philosophy, life will hand you one by default, and usually it's not a very good one. Most people don't fail because they lack talent or opportunity. Most people don't fall short because they didn't try hard enough. They fall short because their personal philosophy is weak, outdated, or borrowed from someone who never figured things out either. You can always trace failure not in business, but in life, to a philosophy that didn't serve its owner. And you can always trace success, not just money, but fulfillment, to a personal philosophy that was upgraded, refined, and built on purpose. If you change your thinking, you change your philosophy. And when you change your philosophy, your life begins to change in quiet but undeniable ways. See, what you believe about yourself determines how you show up in the world. If you believe you're capable, you'll seek opportunity. If you believe you're lucky, you'll act with boldness. If you believe you're growing, you'll embrace challenges. But if your philosophy says you're unlucky, unworthy, or stuck, you'll pull back, you'll hesitate, you'll talk yourself out of chances that might have changed everything. That's the power of philosophy. It whispers into your decisions and paints your perception of what's possible. The mistake most people make is thinking they can solve outside problems with outside changes, switching jobs, moving cities, starting something new. But if the same philosophy is sitting in the driver's seat, you end up in the same place no matter how many times you move. Nothing truly changes until the mind that is making the decisions begins to change. If your philosophy says you're a victim, life will always seem unfair. If your philosophy says you're responsible, then life becomes your playground. It becomes your workshop. And it becomes something you can shape instead of something you have to survive. Philosophy isn't built in a day. It's built daily. Every book you read, every mentor you listen to, every experience you reflect on, it's either strengthening your philosophy or weakening it. If you're not careful, you'll let society, friends, the media, or even failure itself write your philosophy for you. And the tragedy is when someone leaves their entire life under the weight of a philosophy that was never theirs to begin with. That's why you have to be intentional about shaping it. You have to take ownership of the process. What you accept as true becomes the limits of your world, and what you challenge and question becomes the fuel for your growth. Your philosophy controls your attitude. It governs your response to setbacks. It influences the goals you set, the standards you live by, the people you allow into your life, and the dreams you dare to pursue. If your philosophy says it's too late, you'll never start. If your philosophy says now is the best time, you'll move with urgency. If it says I'll never be good at that, you'll stay the same. But if it says I can learn anything, then the world opens up to you in ways others can't even imagine. There's a big difference between a fixed philosophy and a growing one. A fixed philosophy clings to what's always been. A growing one stays open, curious, hungry for better answers, and that hunger is what separates those who repeat their years from those who evolve through them. The person with a fixed philosophy looks at a problem and says, "That's just the way it is." The one with a growth-centered philosophy says, "There must be a better way." You have to ask yourself regularly, is the way I see life serving me? Because if it's not, you don't need a new job or a new relationship or a new year. You need a new lens, you need a new way of thinking. That's how transformation starts, not with external force, but with internal alignment. When your beliefs line up with possibility, your actions naturally follow. You start trying more. You start asking better questions. You stop settling. You begin to look forward with anticipation instead of fear. And over time, that personal philosophy, your outlook, your beliefs, your way of thinking, begins to reshape not only your results, but your very identity. When people ask how someone became successful, they usually look at strategies and habits, but underneath the strategy is always a philosophy, a way of looking at life that made the strategy worth applying. That's why two people can hear the same advice, and one will transform their life while the other will ignore it. The difference isn't intelligence, it's philosophy. One was ready to receive it, the other was still trapped in a way of thinking that blocked growth. So if you want to change your life, don't just look at what you're doing, look at what you're believing. Because until that changes, nothing else can. It's human nature to want things to be easier. We've all been there. You're working hard, putting in time, facing challenge after challenge, and somewhere in the middle of it all, you whisper to yourself, "I wish this were easier." But the truth is, easy is not what builds greatness. Easy doesn't build strength. Easy doesn't build character. And easy never builds a meaningful life. If you keep wishing for easy, you're wishing away the very struggle that's shaping you into the person you need to become. The real key to success, growth, and fulfillment isn't found in avoiding difficulty. It's found in becoming better. Every time you wish for things to be easier, you're putting your power in the hands of the world. You're saying, if the world will get easier, then I'll succeed. If people treat me better, then I'll show up differently. If the road smooths out, then I'll walk it. But that's not how life rewards people. Life doesn't respond to hope. It responds to action, and action comes from strength. Strength doesn't come from ease. It comes from doing what's hard until it becomes part of who you are. When you shift your mindset from wishing for ease to wishing for better, everything changes. Instead of looking at a challenge and hoping it disappears, you start asking, how can I grow through this? What skill do I need to develop to overcome this? What lesson is this moment trying to teach me? And when you ask better questions, life starts giving you better answers. You stop being at the mercy of your circumstances, and you start becoming the kind of person who can handle any circumstance. Think about the people you admire, leaders, mentors, achievers, builders, creators. None of them had it easy. What they had was the mindset to get better. They looked at adversity as the classroom. They treated discomfort as training. They understood that pressure builds diamonds, and the fire is where steel is forged. That's why they rose above. That's why they became someone people listen to and follow and remember, because they stopped complaining about the weight on their shoulders and decided to grow stronger legs. The real breakthrough happens when you stop waiting for things to get easier and start working on becoming stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more skilled, more focused. When the world gets tough, you raise your level. When the problems get bigger, you grow bigger. That's the shift. That's the edge. That's where you start separating yourself from the crowd. Most people are looking for a path with the least resistance. They want the secret formula, the shortcut, the hack. But what they don't realize is that everything they're chasing is only found on the other side of difficulty. It's not the avoidance of hard work that brings success, it's the embrace of it. The people who wish for easy often remain stuck because the moment things get uncomfortable, they shrink. But the people who wish to be better, they rise, they keep moving, they face the resistance with a decision to grow through it, not run from it. Now, here's the good part. The better you get, the easier life feels, not because the world changed, but because you changed. You learned how to handle more, you developed stronger habits, you gained control over your emotions. You stopped being surprised by the struggle and started expecting it, preparing for it, welcoming it. So, what once felt like a wall now feels like a stepping stone. What used to paralyze you now empowers you. That's the reward of becoming better instead of begging for easier. In every area of life, your career, your relationships, your health, your finances, there will always be challenge. You can't eliminate it, but you can outgrow it. You can become the person who doesn't get shaken by small problems, who doesn't give up at the first sign of trouble, who doesn't panic when plans fall apart. You can be the kind of person who responds instead of reacts, who builds instead of breaks down, who stands tall when others collapse. But to get there, you have to stop asking life to change and start asking yourself to change. This mindset isn't just motivational talk, it's practical power. Because the moment you stop seeing obstacles as curses and start seeing them as opportunities, you unlock a level of energy and focus most people never tap into. You begin to live with intention, you build momentum, you discover parts of yourself that would have stayed hidden if life had been comfortable. You learn to trust yourself, not because you've never failed, but because you've failed and come back stronger every time. When you wish for better instead of easier, you stop seeing life as something that's happening to you and start seeing it as something you're actively shaping. You take control, you take responsibility, and responsibility is where real power begins. The road doesn't get smoother. You just start walking it with better shoes. The climb doesn't disappear, you just get stronger legs. The nights don't vanish, you just become someone who can navigate the dark with faith and focus. And all of this starts with a decision to stop looking for an easier path and instead become the kind of person who can walk the hard one with purpose. Because you weren't meant for comfort, you were meant for growth, you were built to overcome, you were designed to evolve. And wishing for better opens the door to the life you were truly meant to live. Life doesn't give you what you want, and it certainly doesn't hand you what you wish for. It gives you what you deserve, based on the value you bring to the table. That's a philosophy not many people want to accept, because it puts the responsibility right back where it belongs on their own shoulders. But it's the truth. The marketplace doesn't respond to need, it responds to value. The world doesn't reward intentions, it rewards contribution. You don't attract success by hoping for it, you attract it by becoming valuable. Now, what does value mean? It doesn't mean being busy. It doesn't mean doing a lot of things or being constantly in motion. Value means becoming the kind of person who brings solutions, who solves problems, who builds, who creates, who uplifts, who leads. And the moment you shift your thinking from what can I get to what can I become, you start to understand the game of life. You start to play at a higher level, not because the rules change, but because you do. Most people spend their time trying to chase opportunity. They're running around trying to find something or someone to give them a shot. But what they don't understand is that real opportunity doesn't need to be chased. It's attracted. It finds the person who's prepared, the one who's sharpened their mind, strengthened their habits, and developed the discipline to follow through. That kind of person doesn't have to go knocking on every door. The right door shows up in front of them because their value created gravity. You have to ask yourself every single day, am I becoming more valuable? Not just to your employer or to your clients or to your business, but to your family, to your relationships, to your community, and most importantly, to yourself. Because when you increase your value, everything around you starts to shift. People take notice, your influence grows. Your confidence rises, your income follows, but all of it begins with you deciding to become a person of increasing worth. Let's talk about the workplace. Two people can have the same job title, same hours, same tools, and same instructions. Yet one will get promoted and the other will stay stagnant. Why? Because one of them decided to become more valuable. They studied more, they took on challenges others avoided, they made things better without being asked. That's value, and the marketplace always finds a way to reward value, even if it takes time. The other person, waiting for recognition without adding anything new, is stuck in the old mindset, I showed up, so I deserve more. But life doesn't respond to presence, it responds to performance and progress. Value is also tied to awareness. You can't increase your value if you're not aware of where you're lacking. That's why feedback is so important. Growth starts when you stop defending your weaknesses and start developing your strengths. You listen. You learn. You stay humble enough to admit you don't know it all and hungry enough to do something about it. That combination, humility and hunger, is what accelerates value. It's what makes you coachable. And coachable people are the ones who rise fastest because they don't waste time pretending, they spend time improving. Becoming more valuable is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming consistent in your pursuit of excellence. You might not have all the resources, all the connections, or all the experience. But if you bring energy, attitude, and a teachable spirit to the table, you're already more valuable than someone who's got the tools but lacks the willingness to grow. Value is also deeply tied to service. If you want to be truly valuable, find a way to serve others, solve a problem that matters, make someone else's life easier, help a team move forward, support someone's growth. That kind of value doesn't go unnoticed because while people may forget your words, they won't forget how you made them feel. And if your presence lifts others, you've become a person of rare and lasting value. The beautiful thing about value is that it compounds. Every new skill you develop, every discipline you strengthen, every book you read, every challenge you overcome, it's adding to your value bank. And that bank will always pay dividends, maybe not immediately, but eventually. It pays in respect, in confidence, in opportunities, in income, and most importantly, in the kind of person you become. Because at the end of the day, becoming valuable isn't just about what you get, it's about who you are. A person of value doesn't have to chase reputation, they earn it. They don't beg for respect. They command it through their character and their contribution. So you have to stop thinking in terms of what you want and start thinking in terms of what you can give. When you walk into a room, don't ask, "What can I get from this?" Ask, "What can I add to this?" When you wake up in the morning, don't just hope for a better day. Build it by showing up as a better version of yourself. Every day is a new opportunity to invest in your own value. And the more you invest, the more life will return that investment in ways you never expected. Every day, from the moment you wake up until the time your head hits the pillow, your mind is under attack. Not in a dramatic or violent way, but slowly, subtly, through what you see, what you hear, what you read, and who you surround yourself with. Ideas, attitudes, fears, doubts, criticism, they're all knocking at the door of your mind, asking to be let in. And unless you stand guard, unless you take full control of what enters that space between your ears, you'll start living a life shaped by someone else's thinking, someone else's limitations, someone else's fears. That's why one of the most powerful disciplines a person can develop is to stand guard at the door of their mind. The mind is fertile soil. Whatever you plant, it grows. Plant seeds of belief and you'll grow courage. Plant seeds of doubt and you'll grow hesitation. Plant anger, you'll reap resentment. Plant gratitude, and abundance begins to take root. But here's what most people don't realize: you're not the only one planting. The world is planting too. Friends, media, advertisements, social platforms, co-workers, even strangers on the street, they're constantly tossing seeds into your mind. If you're not careful, if you don't stay aware, you'll find yourself growing a garden full of weeds and wondering why your life feels so off track. To stand guard means to be intentional. It means you become selective with the voices you allow influence over your thoughts. Not all advice is wise, not all opinions are valid, and not every voice deserves a seat at your mental table. If you give access to the wrong voices, they start to shape your narrative. You start doubting your dreams. You start questioning your progress. You start hesitating on opportunities. You start accepting average because someone else told you excellence was too hard. You have to be just as intentional about what you don't listen to as you are about what you do. Protect your mind like you'd protect your home. If someone knocked on your door and tried to throw garbage into your living room, you'd shut the door. But how many people allow garbage to be poured into their minds every day? Gossip, drama, fear-driven headlines, lazy thinking, pessimistic opinions, these things pile up, and without realizing it, you begin to carry their weight. Your thoughts shape your beliefs shape your actions, and your actions shape your results. It all starts with a thought, and that thought either builds you or breaks you. You have to be willing to hold it your influences. Who are you listening to? Who do you spend the most time around? What kind of conversations are you allowing in your life? If those voices aren't pushing you to grow, they're holding you back. If they're not encouraging progress, they're contributing to stagnation. And this doesn't mean you cut everyone off or live in isolation. It means you develop the strength to filter. You listen, but you don't absorb. You observe, but you don't internalize. You hear it, but you don't let it take root if it doesn't align with the life you're building. Mental protection is not just about avoiding negativity, it's about feeding positivity. It's about feeding your mind with ideas that uplift you, challenge you, and stretch your capacity. Read the kind of books that expand your thinking. Listen to people who have walked the path you're trying to walk. Fill your environment with learning, with wisdom, with energy that aligns with your vision, because your mind, like your body, becomes what you feed it. If all you consume is junk, you can't expect to perform at a high level. If all you surround yourself with is small-mindedness, you can't expect to think big. What enters your mind determines what exits your life. Your mental environment is either working for you or against you. You have to train your mind to work in your favor. Train it to see possibilities when others see problems. Train it to stay focused when distractions scream for attention. Train it to stay calm when pressure rises. But that kind of training only happens when you're standing guard consistently, every day, every moment. You can't let your guard down just because things seem calm. That's often when the wrong thoughts slip in unnoticed. And it's not just outside voices you need to watch. It's your own. That voice in your head, your self-talk, is the most consistent influence of all. You've got to train that voice to speak with faith, with clarity, with direction. If that voice is full of criticism, doubt, fear, and second-guessing, you're fighting a war on two fronts, outside and inside. But if that voice is trained to affirm, to challenge, to encourage, to remind you of your goals, then you're carrying your own internal motivator wherever you go. Standing guard at the door of your mind also means knowing when to rest, when to unplug, when to reset. Because even the most disciplined mind needs time to recover. It's not about constant input, it's about intentional input. Don't confuse noise with progress. Sometimes silence is where the best ideas are born. Reflection strengthens your mental guard. Meditation sharpens it, gratitude fuels it, clarity refocuses it, but none of that happens by accident. It all starts with awareness. When you treat your mind like the most valuable asset you have, it begins to reward you like one. It becomes a source of strength, of creativity, of confidence, of direction. And the stronger your mind, the less control the world has over your emotions, your focus, your decisions. Because now you're not reacting to life, you're responding with intention. That's the difference between being a product of your environment and being the one who shapes it. There are two kinds of lives people end up with: one they designed or one they stumbled into. And the truth is, most people never design their lives. They don't sit down with a pen and paper, a vision and some discipline, and say, "This is what I want my life to look like." Instead, they wake up day after day, responding to whatever shows up, pulled by distractions, pushed by pressures, shaped by circumstances they never chose. They confuse movement with meaning, activity with achievement, and years go by before they realize they've been living by default, not by design. Living by default means you're reacting instead of creating. It means you're following paths you didn't choose, adopting values you didn't define, chasing goals you didn't set. You take the job because it's there. You accept the schedule because it's expected. You live by routines that were handed to you, not built by you. The danger is not in failing to reach your goals. The danger is in never setting them, in drifting, in surviving instead of building. If you don't make a plan for your own life, you will end up a part of someone else's plan, and most of the time, their plan isn't much. It's not rooted in your purpose. It's not connected to your calling. It's just convenient for them. Designing your life means deciding what matters to you and then building around that. It means taking responsibility for how your time is spent, how your energy is invested, how your talents are used. It's not about control, it's about clarity. Clarity gives you power. When you're clear on what kind of life you want, you begin to align your choices with that vision. You stop chasing everything and start choosing what fits. You learn how to say no, not out of rejection, but out of direction. Because when your life has a design, you don't follow every impulse, and you don't get swayed by every opinion. You move with purpose, but this kind of clarity doesn't happen automatically. It takes reflection, it takes silence. It takes time alone, away from noise and distraction, to think deeply about who you want to be and how you want to live. What are your values? What does success really mean to you? Not to your parents, not to your friends, not to the culture around you, but to you. What kind of people do you want in your life? What kind of work feels meaningful to you? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? These are design questions, and most people never ask them, so they never build answers. You can't design a life around everything. You have to make trade-offs. That's what mature people do. You can't be everywhere, do everything, please everyone, and still live with focus. Design means choosing. And choosing means saying no to some very good things, so you can say yes to the best things. When you don't design your time, distractions will. When you don't design your priorities, pressure will. When you don't design your habits, stress will. You either take control or something else takes control for you. A life by design is not about chasing ease, it's about building meaning. It's not about escaping discomfort, it's about choosing the right kind of discomfort, the kind that leads to growth, to strength, to mastery. It's not about being busy, it's about being intentional. A well-designed life has rhythm, it has order. It has structure built around freedom and freedom shaped by discipline. The most fulfilled people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who had the fewest problems. They're the ones who decided what they wanted, then shaped their days to move toward it with consistency. And when you live with design, you begin to experience a deeper sense of peace, not because life becomes easy, but because you know why you're doing what you're doing. You're not just checking boxes, you're building something. Even your challenges feel different. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how is this helping me become who I said I wanted to be? That question alone can turn frustration into fuel. It can turn setbacks into strategy. It can turn pain into purpose, but only if you've done the work of deciding who you want to become. The greatest gift you can give yourself is direction, not just dreams, but a real blueprint for turning them into reality. That blueprint won't be perfect, and it won't be permanent. You'll adjust, adapt, revise, but without it, you're building a house with no foundation. You're trying to win a game with no rules. You're hoping for a result with no strategy. And in today's world, where noise is constant, options are endless, and comparison is everywhere, clarity is your greatest competitive advantage. You have to realize that drift is dangerous. 1 year of drift turns into 5 years becomes a decade, and by the time you wake up, the opportunity to build the life you wanted has been traded for a life that just happened. Not because you weren't capable, not because you weren't smart, but because you never stopped to ask, am I designing this, or am I just enduring it? When you design your life, you become a creator instead of a consumer. You become the architect instead of the passenger. You wake up with intent, not just obligation. You move through your day not just reacting to problems, but building toward vision. And that's where real freedom is found, not in escaping responsibility, but in embracing the responsibility to shape your own future. When you take all of this and bring it together, what becomes clear is that the quality of your life is not determined by luck, circumstances, or outside forces. It's determined by the way you think. The mindset you choose, the discipline you develop, and the value you bring. Your personal philosophy is the foundation of everything. It guides your actions, shapes your responses, and ultimately creates your future. When you stop wishing for things to be easier and start working on becoming better, you begin to grow into someone who can handle life with clarity and confidence. You start attracting better opportunities because you've become more valuable to the people and world around you. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by standing guard at the door of your mind, protecting it from negativity, distraction, and weak thinking, while intentionally feeding it with wisdom, truth, and purpose. And above all, it happens when you stop drifting and begin to design your life with intention. Decide who you want to be. Decide where you want to go, and then live each day in alignment with that vision, because the life you're after isn't found out there somewhere, it's built from within.